At the beginning of the season, if I told you that the Detroit Tigers would be the first team to 30 wins, beating out some juggernauts like the Dodgers, Phillies, or Mets in the National League, and the Yankees or even Guardians in the American League, you probably would have looked at me like I was crazy. But hey, that's the state of baseball right now. The 2025 season in Detroit has started off almost perfectly. Their lineup top down is filled with either stars or very productive players. Their pitching rotation is led by potentially the best pitcher in all of baseball right now in Tarek Skubal, followed by quality arms and breakout stars, and their bullpen has been as dominant as ever. As of May 16th, the day in which they reached 30 wins, they are the only team in baseball to be top 5 in both OPS and ERA, perfectly showcasing an all-around dominant start in all facets. Their rise has been meteoric. What is looking like one of, if not the best team in all of baseball, had a losing record just 2 seasons ago in 2023. What's more, this team was also 8 games under 500 late into the 2024 season, and sellers at that year's trade deadline. This team should be put under notice as a potential juggernaut for years to come. Not only do they have one of the better farm systems in all of baseball, developing multiple potential stars in their minor league system, even after prize prospect Jackson Jobe graduates, but they are also one of the youngest rosters from an offensive perspective as well, with many of their core pieces being 25 or younger. With such success and a great team turnaround, analyzing Detroit's rebuild by looking back over the years will showcase how this team has been able to pull off such a successful and seemingly quick turnaround. And moreover, it can teach us what we as fans can expect from a rebuild. But before we get onto this video, could you guys please hit the like and subscribe button? Currently, only 3% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so if y'all do, that would very much help me create more videos like this one for you guys. And without further ado, let's get on to the video. Now, you may be wondering, why jump all the way back to the 2017 season when the real turnaround begins over 6 years later? Well, the foundations for any good rebuild began at the rebuild's inception, and by seeing how this team was built from the ground up, we gain a better understanding of how rebuilds like this should go. The 2017 Tigers were projected to be a decent team. Nobody had them winning the AL Central, that was for Cleveland, but in a rare case in which Cleveland did struggle, Detroit was deemed as the second best team in that division, and for them to potentially sneak into the playoffs. For the past 2 seasons, they had finished roughly middle of the pack, and with an aging top of the rotation and lineup, coupled with a poor farm system, this was probably one of their last real shots at contention before slipping into a forced rebuild. And well, unfortunately, what was probably their last real shot at winning with this current core ended up sputtering right out of the gate. After playing roughly 500 ball throughout the first 40 games of the season, Detroit went on a really bad stretch, going 11-22 over the next month and change to play themselves squarely out of postseason contention. They would try to make up ground after that, but Cleveland was running away with the division, and the Royals and Twins played the Tigers into 4th place going into the trade deadline, where they would sell off some huge pieces and then go into freefall, ending the season on a 6-24 streak. This team just saw too much regression from too many of their key players. Their middle infield, deemed to be a strength of this team, struggled with both Ian Kinsler and Jose Iglesias posting below league average offensive seasons. Verlander, while still good and the bona fide ace of this staff, was nowhere near the level of elite that he was before, posting an ERA in the high 3s. Meanwhile, the rest of their rotation was just bad, with only second-year All-Star Michael Fulmer posting an ERA under 4. Worst of all amongst this season was the stark regression of 2 of their best hitters though, an 11-time All-Star Miguel Cabrera and 5-time All-Star Victor Martinez, designated as middle-of-the-order sluggers for this season, both of which would post below-league average offensive seasons despite playing first base and designated hitter, both of whom were also in their mid-30s, and their collapse was mirrored by the team. However, despite the poor record, the 2017 season wasn't all bad. The Detroit Tigers would, on a tiebreaker, finish with the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft, a sort of small reprieve for the sufferings of that season. Additionally, you know how I said that this season was likely going to be the last chance at going for it with the age of this roster and poor farm system? Well, this season allowed the Tigers to really kick off their rebuild with some trades. For starters, they traded their longtime outfielder JD Martinez, who was on the last year of his contract and would have walked in free agency after this season, to the Diamondbacks for a trio of prospects. What's more, they would trade their longtime catcher Alex Avila, who was having a very good season up to that point with a 131 OPS+, to the Cubs for Isaac Paredes and Jaime Candelario. Considering Avila was on the last year of his contract and would be only a 2-month rental, this was a stellar move for Alex's father and general manager Al Avila. Lastly, in August, they would ship off disgruntled star Justin Upton for salary relief and 5-time All-Star and beloved ace Justin Verlander to the Astros for a trio of Houston's top prospects. Admittedly, it's hard to see some stars go. In a perfect world, they would stay with the team through thick and thin. However, when entering a deep rebuild like what Detroit needed to go through, trading Verlander, Martinez, Avila, and Upton at this time provided a much-needed boost for this rebuild that would make up for what would be a middling result in the 2017 draft. Additionally, to add to the intrigue of this farm system, two intriguing prospects jumped into the fold in Gregory Soto and Jason Foley, both of them minor league signees. They burst onto the season during the 2017 minor league season to put themselves on the prospect map, with Soto posting a 2.25 ERA in 23 starts in the lower levels of the minor leagues, and Foley posting a 2.48 for the same teams as well. Coupled with the trades, while Detroit still didn't have any star prospects to hang their hopes on, they were steadily building up a pretty deep system that seemed barren just a short year prior. And so, with most of the heavy lifting done during this year's trade deadline, this club, in firm rebuilding mode, did the smart move by turning towards reclamation projects and free agency while continuing to ship off aging pieces. They would end up trading 36-year-old Ian Kinsler to the Angels for a couple of prospects, as well as sign center fielder Leonys Martin and veteran starters Mike Fiers and Francisco Liriano to help shore up a rotation and lineup that was one of the worst in baseball. Nonetheless, this Tigers farm system would be what the focus was on this season, and while still not great, it had noticeably improved. And what's more, they were also younger in the lineup for the upcoming season, ready to try out some more young pieces. And with that, we move to the 2018 season, which ended at 64-98, the exact same record as the season prior. However, this season, now in hard rebuilding mode, did not exude that same aura of disappointment and deflating letdowns. In the beginning stages of a rebuild, there aren't even any real young bright spots or great young prospects yet to look forward to at the major league level. Jaime Candelario was the only real prospect to be a regular fixture in the new lineup, and he played decent in his first full season with a 91 OPS+. Besides him offensively, Miguel Cabrera played well and looked to have a bounce-back season, but tore his biceps in June and was out for the rest of the season. Nicholas Castellanos was therefore their best hitter over the full season, posting an 850 OPS in his age 26 season, his best up to that point. Meanwhile, Leonys Martin played well enough for him to be shipped off as part of a package for prospect Willie Castro, and similarly, Mike Fiers played well enough in the rotation and was traded to the Athletics for prospects. Meanwhile, the rest of the rotation, while not downright bad like last year, was merely solid with a 4.5 ERA across the board. Matthew Boyd and breakout pitcher Blaine Hardy likely led the pack among them, pitching to a 3.5 ERA in limited appearances. And while this major league season didn't particularly matter in the grand scheme of things for Detroit, as there weren't any real impact prospects making their major league debuts, and the prospects acquired in trades were tier 2 prospects at best, the 2018 MLB draft would be where they could really jumpstart this rebuild, and reinvigorate hope into a team that really hadn't had anything to look forward to in terms of young star talent for a while. And well, they did not disappoint, with a fairly strong draft top down. With the number 1 overall pick, they would select the best player on the top of most draft boards in Auburn standout Casey Mize. Mize had a polished repertoire for a starter, headlined by a mid-90s fastball with great control and a diving splitter to generate a ton of swing and miss. With their second-round pick, they selected 6'4" outfielder Parker Meadows, who had a very projectable path to 20 home runs with good speed and defense. And with their middle picks, they would select utility infielder Cody Clemens in the 3rd round, and one Tarek Skubal out of Northwest in the 9th round. When a team has a number 1 overall pick, they need to select a star for the sake of their rebuild. I'm talking about a player who can win MVP or even the Cy Young. And while they did it unconventionally, the Tigers ended up doing just that in this draft. Now, to put it simply, the 2019 season from the Major League perspective sucked. Despite starting off on a 12-10 start to the season, the Tigers would end up losing 114 games, second worst only to the abysmal 2003 team in Tigers history, which lost 119. In a rebuild that would turn out to be long and brutal, this would be by far the lowest point. There just weren't that many solid contributors to field a competitive baseball team. Among the lineup, the only offensive contributor with an OPS better than league average was corner outfielder Nicholas Castellanos and 24-year-old outfielder Victor Reyes. Other than that, utility man Nico Goodrum was the only offensive player that played in at least 100 games to post a season better than replacement level. This offense, unquestionably the worst in baseball, finished last in runs scored by a wide margin. And to add insult to injury, this was not helped out by a pitching staff that ranked 3rd worst in baseball at limiting runs. The rotation just had no real ace. Matthew Boyd pitched 180 innings but led the league in home runs allowed, and while Spencer Turnbull and Daniel Norris stayed healthy and improved over last year, they still posted ERAs over 4.4. The only real bright spot was the bullpen. Shane Green posted an all-star season as their closer and got traded to the Braves for Joey Wentz and Travis Demerit, and Nick Ramirez, Buck Farmer, Joe Jimenez, and Daniel Strumpf all posted quality ERAs with a heavy workload. The only other move of note was that Nicholas Castellanos, their offensive bright spot, was also traded at the deadline to the Cubs for Alex Lang and Paul Rechin. And as with any rebuild, while the major league standings at this point would not matter in the grand scheme of things, the development of top prospects would ultimately showcase how close this team is to truly achieving sustainable success. The 2018 draft gave them legitimate prospects with star upside, vaulting their farm system into around the middle of the pack. The upcoming minor league season and draft would continue to improve the farm system in this regard. The 2019 minor league season, while Parker Meadows struggled to get consistent contact, first-rounder Casey Mize pitched very well to an ERA of 2.55 in high A and AA, third-rounder Cody Clemens progressed up to AA as well, and ninth-rounder Tarek Skubal dominated to generate waves in the prospect world. Skubal had better stuff than his ninth-round draft capital, but injury concerns dropped him considerably. After impressing with 33 strikeouts in 20 innings after being drafted in 2018, Skubal would post one of the better minor league seasons in Tigers history by striking out 179 batters in only 122 innings to a 2.42 ERA in high A and AA, not missing a step along the way. With this season, Skubal suddenly jumped into top 100 conversations, joining first-rounders Matt Manning and Casey Mize in the process. For some other notable prospects, Willie Castro impressed in AAA to make his major league debut with the team in the second half, and Isaac Paredes continued his development in AA. This farm system was now considerably deep and had a ton of upside in the pitching rotation. A strong 2019 draft which saw them select outfield prospect Riley Green 5th overall, as well as one of the steals in the draft and outfield prospect Kerry Carpenter in the 19th round, will continue to bolster the overall upside of this farm system, which now looked to be very strong from both a hitting and pitching perspective. So, after another quiet offseason, the Tigers would begin what would hopefully be another step forward in their rebuild. Unfortunately, the 60-game season meant that a lot of the young players on this team would not get a full season of development on this squad. Fortunately though, fans of the Tigers would not have to suffer through another 90-plus loss season. This team was filled with young players as well as players who simply never established themselves as big league caliber, and predictably, they finished last in their division with a 25-35 record, resulting in the firing of their manager Rob Gardenhire in the process. In terms of prospects and young talents, among them there were some hits and misses. Tarek Skubal struggled with an ERA over 5, although he did strike out over a batter per inning in his small sample size. Isaac Paredes struggled to slug the ball with authority in his time at third base, and Casey Mize posted an ERA near 7 in 7 starts. However, Willie Castro posted a great offensive season to finish 4th in Rookie of the Year voting, Jeimer Candelario broke out with an all-star caliber season playing full-time at third base, and Gregory Soto posted a good season with 29 strikeouts in 23 innings. Besides them, free agent one-year signings Jonathan Scope and CJ Cron were good offensive contributors, and Spencer Turnbull and Jose Cisnero had very good seasons in the rotation and bullpen respectively. The bullpen continued to be the best part of this team, as relievers Brian Garcia, Tyler Alexander, Daniel Norris, and Buck Farmer joined Cisnero as focal points of this team. And for the second time in 3 years, the Tigers would end up picking number 1 overall after their terrible season in 2019. In what would be one of the best hauls in the 2020 draft, the Tigers would select ASU standout Spencer Torkelson number 1 overall, followed by Dylan Dingler in the 2nd round, Gage Workman in the 4th round, and outfielder Colt Keith in the 5th round. In a very uncertain draft due to the lack of any real high school or college season, coupled with an incomplete evaluation period, the Tigers would find some studs in the later rounds, which continued to add to a farm system that was ranked as one of the best in baseball already due to recent draft additions. That being said, I think that this farm system specifically suffered greatly due to the loss of a full minor league season in 2020. For example, Matt Manning, Detroit's 2016 first-round selection, was a top 100 prospect and considered on par with Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal in terms of prospect pedigree before the 2020 season. He was facing a big test going to AA for his first full season. However, instead of continuing to develop against AA hitters, Manning would face the same hitters at the alternate training site, which prevented him from truly adapting on a competitive scene. Manning would also suffer a forearm strain which shut him down in August, and would he have gotten that same strain if he was properly ramped up during spring training? We'll never know. But what I do know is that a full minor league season would have definitely been better for his development, especially looking at his numbers before and after 2020. Similarly, look at how Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal struggled in the major leagues. Just getting to AA in 2019, neither of these pitchers likely would have seen any major league action until at least September, and this would have been after ramping up through AA and AAA. Even though they had big league stuff, immediately pushing them into the deep end like that by putting them into the rotation at best prevented them from making steady improvement as they climbed up the minor league ladder, and at worst stunted their growth and set them back by weakening their confidence and ability to pitch at the big league level. The optics here are interesting. Would it have been better for their prized prospects to pitch at the major league roster or the alternate training site? Manning seems to show that what the Tigers did with Skubal and Mize was the right decision. However, I firmly believe that a full minor league season would have significantly bettered the overall timeline for many of the Tigers' prospects, potentially pushing forward the Tigers' rebuild a full year or two in development. This lack of a season stunted the development of everyone, including the guys I didn't talk about like Riley Green or the other 2020 draftees. For a team like the Tigers, who depended a lot on the development of their young prospects, I think the lack of a minor league season impacted them specifically a lot. So after that weird season and another edition of short-term veteran signings, biggest among them being Robbie Grossman for 2 years and $10 million, another season of rebuilding arrived in 2021. Arguably, the biggest move of the offseason was agreeing to terms with the disgraced AJ Hinch after his 1-year suspension following the Astros cheating scandal. Nonetheless, under the guidance of Hinch, this team noticeably improved, especially offensively, to offer some encouraging signs towards their rebuild. After starting the season off slowly, with the Tigers being 11 games under 500 going into the All-Star break, this Tigers team did not quit like many of the teams before them, and actually played over 500 baseball for the rest of the season to finish just short of 80 wins with a 77-85 record. For some of their noteworthy players, Candelario continued his torrid offensive stretch to become the most valuable player on the Tigers, leading the league in doubles. Additionally, Casey Mize broke out as the ace of this young staff, and while he wasn't getting a ton of swing and miss, he posted a ton of weak contact and stayed healthy to pitch 150 innings to an ERA under 3.75. The catcher position became an area of strength for the first time in this rebuild, with Eric Haas playing well coupled with rookie Jake Rogers. And the offseason additions in Robbie Grossman, Rule 5 pick Akil Baddoo, and minor league free agent starter Willie Peralta all excelled, and the rotation took a step forward with Skubal settling in nicely, with nearly 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. The bullpen continued to be an area of strength, with Gregory Soto and Michael Fulmer excelling as co-closers, and the contributions of Tyler Alexander, Jose Cisnero, and Kyle Funkhauser. With the bullpen performing so well, the Tigers felt comfortable enough to trade one of their established relievers in Daniel Norris, who admittedly wasn't having the greatest season, to the Brewers for pitching prospect Reese Olson at the deadline. This 2021 farm system would receive another blessing of a top 5 selection in this year's draft, this time acquiring starting pitching prospect Jackson Jobe with the 3rd overall pick, who they were able to sign to underslot value. With this money, they were able to get Ty Madden with their compensation round pick, who is widely considered a first-round talent. This farm system, even seeing the graduations of 3 of their top pitching prospects in Casey Mize, Tarek Skubal, and Matt Manning, as well as some nice depth pieces like Akil Baddoo and Jake Rogers, would continue to remain strong with some of their high-upside talent. Both Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green had excellent offensive season to become top 5 prospects in all of baseball, the only team to have 2. Each of them moved up to AA by the end of this season, posting an OPS over 900 across a full minor league season. As for some of their other prospects, Isaac Paredes posted a great season and earned major league at-bats for the second half, and a ton of their other prospects like Dylan Dingler, Colt Keith, Parker Meadows, and other 2019 and 2020 draftees began their professional careers. Now with a ton of upper echelon prospects, coupled with a productive roster that showcased that they could win games at a fairly consistent rate, this team decided that now was a proper time to add veteran pieces to help out this current core. In terms of the timeline, I am all for adding pieces at this time. In hindsight, it really did seem like Detroit was on the up and coming for the 2022 season. It's just that the core pieces that they were expecting on were a tad bit behind in their development than initially expected, potentially due to stalled development during the pandemic. Nonetheless, the Tigers made some huge moves. For starters, they would end up trading their longtime top prospect and utility infielder Isaac Paredes, plus a draft pick for former top outfield prospect Austin Meadows. In free agency, while they would see longtime starter Matthew Boyd leave, they would sign Andrew Chafin and Michael Pineda for bullpen and rotation help, as well as sign Eduardo Rodriguez and Javier Baez to 5-year $77 million and 6-year $140 million contracts respectively. On paper, these filled a lot of holes. The middle infield was abysmal in 2021 with Willie Castro's regression and Nico Goodrum, and the team needed veteran starters as well as another power bat. Resultantly, these signings gave Tigers fans a lot of hope for the season, and Detroit was now considered a dark horse for the 2022 season as favorites to break out of their rebuild. Unfortunately though, due to a combination of injuries and underwhelming performances, the 2022 season just never got going for the ball club, costing longtime president Al Avila his job. This team would start off rough, going 9-23 in their first 32 games and just never recover, finishing the season 66-96. In terms of expectations versus result, this was the most disappointing season since 2017. There just wasn't a lot that went right for this ball club. Javier Baez, the team's most productive player, regressed offensively back to his raw 2015 form. Similarly, Candelario regressed as well to become almost untenable offensively. Cabrera got his 3,000th hit this season and was an all-star, but for a DH he wasn't putting up great numbers. Arguably, the best offensive contributor was their catcher Eric Haas, as he played 110 games with an OPS plus of 112 and 14 home runs. There just wasn't a ton around him offensively in terms of the young and exciting prospects. Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson both struggled to make consistent contact this season in their rookie year, although Green was a plus defender. Additionally, players like Akil Baddoo or newcomers like Austin Meadows were not able to pick up the slack either. On the pitching side, 2021 breakout Casey Mize only pitched 10 innings due to an elbow sprain which led to Tommy John surgery, and Eduardo Rodriguez only pitched 91 innings due to a litany of injuries and off-the-field issues. The only bright spots in this rotation were Tarek Skubal's breakout, although he too struggled with injury, as well as Matt Manning and Bo Brieski's ascension to Major League caliber starters. And of course, the bullpen remained excellent, with Soto locking down the saves with one of the weirder stat lines I've seen, and a litany of other solid relievers. Nonetheless, it was clear that this team still needed a little bit more development and upside, especially from their offense, if they are to make any waves and break out of this rebuild. And down on the farm, after the graduations of Torkelson and Green, honestly, there didn't look to be that third stud to join them in the lineup. Recent top draftees Jackson Jobe and Ty Madden both had great seasons progressing up the minor league ladder, and Reese Olson was a breakout stud, but they're all pitchers. Dingler was their best position player prospect, but he was considered primarily as a defense-first catcher. They really needed a potent bat in the middle of the lineup, and while some of their prospects provided that high-level upside like Colt Keith and Parker Meadows, and the Tigers drafted another hitting talent in Jace Young in the first round of the 2022 draft, they were not going to be ready for a couple of years, making what Kerry Carpenter did in his immense rise all the more important. Thanks to a good but not great season offensively in AA last year, the former 19th round pick had put himself somewhat on the map going into his age 24 season, but he was still considered a non-prospect. However, Kerry Carpenter's 2022 season would be one of the greatest stories in all of baseball. The work he did at the alternate training site in 2020 finally paid off, as he had an OPS over 1,000 with 22 home runs in just 63 games in AA, and did not stop once he got promoted to AAA. With numbers like this, he was promoted to the major leagues in the final month of the season, where he was one of the Tigers' better hitters from the left-handed side. Carpenter, a man who worked at Dick's Sporting Goods in the offseason, provided the middle-of-the-order slug that the Tigers desperately needed, and solidified himself as part of this young core that the Tigers were building. And in new general manager Jeff Greenberg's first full offseason, what would end up transpiring after the 2022 season was a busy offseason of shuffling around pieces to set this team up for achievable success. With bullpen depth aplenty, they would trade Joe Jimenez to the Braves for 2 players, as well as ship their 2-time All-Star closer Gregory Soto and Cody Clemens to the Phillies for 3 young hitters. They would also trade for utility man Zach McKinstry and claim relievers Tyler Holton and Edwin Uqueta from the Diamondbacks prior to the season. They would claim Andy Ibanez off waivers from the Rangers, re-sign Matthew Boyd for the rotation, and sign Michael Lorenzen for more veteran pitching depth. Altogether, this offseason would prove very fruitful for the Tigers, as they would continue to find even more diamonds in the rough, this time off of waivers and through cheap trades. And what followed would be a very encouraging season. This team was very streaky, as many young teams are, but their hot streak showcased the potential of this team, and in the end, they finished with the most wins they've had in this rebuild with 78. Offensively, this team was much improved. Kerry Carpenter was an all-star caliber bat and a strong side platoon. In the outfield, Spencer Torkelson bounced back to showcase his upside with 31 home runs, although he too struggled with making consistent contact. And Riley Green was a very good hitter, although he had some injury troubles on the year. Andy Ibanez filled in that hole in second base nicely, and on the bench, both Matt Vierling and Zach McKinstry were excellent as utility players. In the pitching rotation, Tarik Skubal dominated when healthy, and for a rotation that still missed Casey Mize, they were all solid. Outside of Skubal, Reese Olson continued his strong minor league numbers to his successful major league debut, Eduardo Rodriguez stayed healthy, and Michael Lorenzen, who would be traded at the deadline for a Phillies top prospect Hao-Yu Lee, and Matt Manning, a longtime top prospect, were all quality middle-of-the-rotation dudes. In the bullpen, Tyler Holton, a waiver claim, had one of the better reliever seasons of the decade, pitching 85 innings to a 2.11 ERA, and Alex Lang was a closer in another great bullpen. This team definitely had foundational pieces for sure, but wasn't a complete team just yet. A season with a healthy Green and Skubal, with maybe a couple more additions, could definitely make some more noise come playoff time, and provided a lot of hope for the 2024 season. And as the major league team was ascending, so was the minor league team, always assembling new high upside pieces. Colt Keith was the real standout from this season. Moving from AA to AAA, Keith posted a .932 OPS and 27 home runs in just under 130 games. With infield flexibility, Keith looked to be the long-term option at second or third base. And with another top 5 selection, this time third overall, the Tigers would select the position player with potentially the highest upside in the entire draft in Max Clark, as well as a stellar hitting utility player in Kevin McConaughey. Altogether, the foundations are put into work for a very sustainable run of success very soon from both a pitching and offensive perspective. So, with the foundation set, the 2023-2024 offseason went underway, with top contributor Eduardo Rodriguez opting out of his contract. Acquiring another veteran starter was now the top priority, and acquire they did, signing reclamation project Jack Flaherty to a 1-year deal and Kenta Maeda for more depth for 2 years and $24 million, expiring after the 2025 season. For bullpen depth, Andrew Chafin would be re-signed along with Shelby Miller, and Gio Urshela would also be signed to a 1-year deal to fill in that hole in third base. Additionally, Colt Keith, 2023's minor league standout, was signed to a very team-friendly 6-year, $28.6 million contract. So, with a strong finish to the 2023 season coupled with a solid offseason, it was safe to say that the vibes were pretty good going into the 2024 season, and in the end, it all ended up for the best. You know how I said that the 2023 team was streaky, as most young teams are? Well, this team made the 2023 team look like a model of consistency. The Tigers would pull off stretches in which they would win 5 of 6 or 5 of 7 of their games, and you would think that they'd be all coming together. And then, they would lose 5 straight or 7 of their last 9 to be right back where they started in the standings. Going into June, they would suffer one of these poor stretches, going only 4-11 in 15 games. And yet, they would win 8 of 10 games going into the All-Star break. Overall, this product on the field is not tenable for sustainable success. And in the middle of getting swept by Cleveland on July 30th to be 5 games under 500 in 4th place in the division, the Tigers would decide to be sellers at the deadline and trade one of their better pitchers in Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers for a couple of decent prospects, as well as Andrew Chafin and Carson Kelly to the Rangers. It seemed to be that, while the Tigers weren't giving up on the season, it was going to be yet another developmental year for this squad. However, the Tigers would pull off one of the greatest stretches in recent memory, getting hot at exactly the right time. For the final 44 games, the Tigers would go on a 31-13 run that would put them at 86 wins. Couple this with an equally magnificent Twins collapse, and the Tigers would sneak into the playoffs as the last wildcard spot in the American League. This team, while significantly improved from 2023, was still in large part held together by the exact same foundation. This time, both Tarik Skubal and Riley Green stayed healthy for the full season and dominated, becoming first-time All-Stars and cornerstones for the franchise, with Skubal winning his first Cy Young in a dominant season. Offensively, there was still a lot to be desired though. Parker Meadows enjoyed success as a starter, but he went down with injury and was limited to only 82 games. Kerry Carpenter continued to rake in his role as a strong side platoon, but Spencer Torkelson regressed significantly offensively, and Gio Urshela's experiment at third base had failed, with him getting DFA'd in August. However, offensively, this team got hot at the right times, and many other times did just enough for that dominant pitching staff to win games. I already discussed that Skubal was dominant, but Reese Olson continued to be a very solid number 2 starter when he was healthy. Casey Mize returned and was solid, and Jack Flaherty was excellent before being traded. And of course, the bullpen was as dominant as ever. Longtime top prospect Jason Foley excelled in the closer role this season, Tyler Holton was as good as ever, finishing 15th in MVP voting as a reliever, and Will Vest and Beau Brisquet rounded out what was a very good top 4 relievers. However, though, it was filled with quality pitchers all around, and pitching carried this team throughout the entire season. With this staff, they were able to hold the Astros to just 3 runs in the wildcard series en route to a sweep and a date with the Guardians in the ALDS. However, in what would be a very back-and-forth series against them, with both teams similarly built, the Guardians would get the best of Skubal in the second time seeing him in this series, and they would fall in the winner-take-all Game 5. However, despite the disappointing ending, you have to be proud of what this team accomplished in such a short period of time, as well as super excited for the future. Much of the core of this team is still in their early to mid-20s, and they still have top prospects and a pretty deep farm system to boot. Thanks to being sellers during the 2024 trade deadline, they have a ton of young talent. To add to their top prospects, in what is hopefully the last pick in the top 12 in a very long time, Detroit would select high school shortstop Bryce Rayner in the first round, and high school pitcher Owen Hall in the second round. Couple these selections with the successful minor league debuts of Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal, as well as an all-star dominant season from Jackson Jobe, the Detroit Tigers' top 10 farm system is suddenly looking to have another wave of prospects over the horizon. And while I'll even admit that I wasn't the biggest fan of Detroit's offseason going into the 2025 season, and that I wish they would have made a big move to address the hole at third base, but they chose to go with veteran stopgaps, they, up to this point of the season, have done almost everything to a T. They have the best record in the American League, and have one of the league's top offenses and pitching staffs, a great recipe for success. Everything is going right for the Tigers this season. Their signings are all hitting, their veteran talents are rebounding, and their young core has remained the foundation. Javier Baez, having moved to center field this season, seemingly has found his swing again after years of inept play. Their new shortstop, Trey Sweeney, acquired in the Jack Flaherty trade, has played admirably over there, along with the middle infield partner Gleyber Torres, who has been off to an amazing start offensively. Spencer Torkelson is off to the best start of his career, and Dylan Dingler has found success offensively, making him a very well-rounded overall catcher. Of course, Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter are also doing what they do, making this lineup suddenly very deep and potent, which is something I have not said about this team before. As for their pitching staff, it's as dominant as ever. Tarek Skubal continues to be one of, if not the best pitcher in baseball, and Reese Olson is nearly matching him stride for stride. Casey Mize, now a full 2 years removed from Tommy John surgery, is reaching his potential form, also with an ERA under 3, before he got shut down with injury. And both Jack Flaherty and top prospect Jackson Jobe are both very good middle rotation arms with high upside. If everything hits here, we're talking about 5 potential aces. In the bullpen, while Holton hasn't been his usual dominant self to begin the season, he's still very good. Furthermore, free agent signee Tommy Kahnle and 2021 waiver claim Will Vest have been locked down to begin the season, continuing the mantra of a very strong, dominant bullpen. This team has been battle-tested already. Casey Mize, Jake Rogers, and now Reese Olson have all been placed on the IL, and they have yet to see anything from Parker Meadows, Matt Vierling, or Alex Cobb this season. For the Tigers to be thriving despite these pieces is a testament to how suddenly deep this team has become. And with these reinforcements on the way, the sky's the limit for this Tigers ball club and all 26 spots in the roster. Overall, this Tigers rebuild wasn't the cleanest. In fact, one could argue that the correct circumstances could have ended this rebuild years sooner. However, this Tigers rebuild goes to showcase that all rebuilds do in fact end eventually, even if the moves aren't optimal. For some specific takeaways about this Detroit rebuild, finding controllable starting pitchers like the Tigers did is incredibly important towards long-term sustainable success. Look at how expensive pitching is on the free agency market. So for the Tigers to hit on their arms allows them to spend big bucks not on the rotation, as they have controllable pieces, but on the bullpen and on hitters, to round out this team. I love how Detroit handled the situation with their rotation and bullpen, and their general strategy regarding the draft. It definitely took some time, drafting a ton of high school hitters, but I'm glad that all of those 90-plus lost seasons weren't for naught, and they were able to find value at not just at the top of the draft boards, but in the later rounds and in the waiver wires as well, finding those diamonds in the rough when 29 other teams cannot see it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down below with new video ideas. I apologize for how long this video is. I tried to make it 20 to 25 minutes like the Orioles rebuild, but there's just so much information to cover, and I didn't want to leave a little bit out. So, if you have any other ideas, maybe shorter videos, let me know in the comments down below. I have ideas to do a mock draft and farm system rankings, but I'm always down to do other ideas. And once again, I will see you guys in the next one. God bless.